Dude, thank you so much for being here, dude.
It's so good to be with you, as always.
I'm excited for this conversation. We're gonna get into some good stuff. I know it. I know just the surface of what you're doing with this project. But I already am super pumped and super excited for it. So, why don't you share a little bit about who you are
Mm,
and kind of what you're up to?
yeah, great question. Well, I'm a failed missionary, ex-ministry. I don't know what words to use here.
Yeah.
I'm an author, or maybe aspiring author. I've written
Mm-hmm.
some books, but I think I've got a long way to go. I've got 6 kids
Mm.
and a wife that somehow is still with me after 15 years. And, we're trying to have baby number 7.
The tribe,
Yeah.
the tribe.
Yeah. So we've been through a lot
Mm.
and we've got a long way to go. And I feel like we're on a healthy path and a healthy journey
Mm.
where the first decade was really a big shit show.
Mm-hmm.
And failures are our chances to learn and grow, and just a lot of growing pains
Yeah.
that first decade, and some days still. But that's some of the background. I've been in the recovery. I've been in recovery actively myself for almost a decade now. We moved back to the States to save our marriage, and really for me to get the help I needed,
Mm.
having to do a sex addiction, porn addiction, and and my wife has been so supportive, and she's been amazing, and she's been doing her work as well, not just, there's blood on everyone's hands, and I claim full responsibility, for my part and everything, but she claims responsibility too, and I think without that combo, we wouldn't still be together.
Mm.
Um, she really is for us. And then over the years, I've walked with dozens of men through the addiction recovery process and began coaching them. And I've been doing real estate and real estate investing as well over the years. And that's fun work, and I have a lot of skills there. But this really has been where my heart and my passion has been, because, as they say, passion is birthed in pain.
Mm.
And this really is, where I've gone through a lot of pain, and I've been to hell, and I've found my
Mm.
way back. And now I love to walk other men through
Mm-hmm.
that path back.
Mm. So it's personal.
Oh,
This is not this is not just a fluff conversation, just to tickle the ears. This is real.
this is real. And I would put an explicit warning on this,
Yeah.
because I'm known to drop a few fucking F bombs.
Get
And
'em out of the way,
I would
buddy.
also put in a trigger warning,
Yeah.
because I'm willing to talk about whatever we're down to talk about. I'm ready to go there.
Mm. Come on. Come on. Well, yeah, let's just dive into it. So, what would you say is the origin story behind this
Hmm.
project, the Wolfpack Method?
Yeah, the Wolfpack Method.
Yeah.
You know, several things. First of all, um, I'm I'm a self starter. I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm not a solo. I'm not a lone wolf.
Mm.
I'm not a solopreneur, if you will.
Mm.
I've found that the things that I start on my own don't tend to last very long.
Mm.
Um, I used to have a lot of good intentions around working out and going to the gym, or just waking up and doing 100 push-ups, or whatever that goal was, and it would after about a month it would lose steam
Mm.
every single time. And the most traction I've ever gotten with it is when I joined CrossFit,
Mm.
and I stuck with it for 2 years straight.
It's very community focused.
It's, man, I was showing up because other people were expecting me to show up.
Mm.
And so that was a big eye opener for me. In the recovery process, I found the same thing happening. The same thing happened with Fire Nights,
Mm-hmm.
that it created a communal space for me to go ahead and do my work
Mm.
and talk about my shit shows. And I found a lot of I found community to be one of the most important parts of the entire healing process.
Mm.
I've got a buddy who went to a 60-day inpatient program.
Mm-hmm.
A dear friend of mine, and
Yeah.
he forked out 60, 70 grand out of pocket. Insurance didn't cover much from his company. And he went for 60 days. And for those 60 days he was there, you know how many times he met one-on-one with his counselor? 2 times, the day he got there and the day he left.
Jeez.
So what the hell was he doing the rest of the 60 days?
Yeah.
He was meeting in small groups.
Mm.
So a lot of addiction, but especially porn addiction and sex addiction, they're considered an intimacy disorder.
Mm.
So we need people, we need healthy relationship.
Mm.
And what we really need to do is rewire our brain so we actually know how to experience healthy intimacy, not sexualized intimacy,
Yeah.
but like the hug I got from you when I got here.
Yeah.
That was beautiful intimacy. There was so much love there, nothing sexualized about it.
Right.
Right. Nothing, but so much beauty.
Yeah.
And it's like what the soul is designed for. And so what I found is that kind of stuff is key to the healing process.
Rewiring. Like, how do we do that? How is that done? How is that facilitated?
Rewiring the brain.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of different kinds of rewiring that's happening. One is intimacy has been sexualized.
Mm.
So for me, I was molested when I was 10 years old. And I kind of thought I was a lucky kid. She was like an older girl. And I thought, oh man, look at me. But it took me 2 decades to realize the impact that night had on me, the confusion it caused me. For me, that day, intimacy was sexualized. I couldn't experience love unless there was sexual, elements to it. Like it was all of a sudden very confusing for me. So no big surprise, I kept men at arm's length. I didn't know how to let them close. So how I experienced intimacy with women had to change, right? But also how I experienced intimacy from men.
Yeah.
It's been really key. I wrote a lot about that in Fire Nights,
Yeah.
the book I published last year.
Yeah.
But what was I? The other thing about rewiring, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
We had, I think the best picture I could give for it is like a grassy field. And imagine you've got to make your way across the field. So you've carved this path that you go down every day.
Yeah.
Right. That's the way you walk to school or the way you walk to work or whatever it is, like this old picture of wheat field. So it's all like tall wheat, or you could picture Gladiator in your head, like your hand running through the wheat.
Yeah. Slow-mo.
In slow-mo, and you've got that beautiful music playing in the background by Hans Zimmer or whoever it was. And then but like these are the paths we've carved from the decisions we've made over and over and over throughout our lives. Yeah. So that includes, let's say, like life starts to get uncomfortable, so we go to a coping mechanism to soothe ourselves. Like, well, that might be masturbation. That might be something like porn. It might be something as simple as social media.
Right.
It might be something like, well, I just go to YouTube when I get home from work, or I just have like 2 glasses of whiskey in the evening just to help me simmer down, right? Like people, they carve these deep paths of rhythms and habits or rituals that they build into their life. So they feel pain, and then this is the path they took to get away from that pain. They're coping mechanisms. But for addiction, usually it can lead to a lot of harm.
Yeah.
Or things that start out innocent can end up being pretty harmful.
Right.
There could be, me as a 10-year-old or 9-year-old masturbating, it was probably a form of self-soothe. Like there was no, charged elements of shame and, but as over the years, it ended up just being a very negative coping mechanism that led to a lot of addiction. And it almost destroyed our marriage and our family. And it did destroy our ministry, and our titles were ripped away. Our finances were ripped away. All of our funding, all of it was gone as a result of this addiction.
Yeah. It grips your life gradually. It's not a,
right.
It's not a like well, I mean, sometimes it can be in an instant, like screw up your life.
Yeah. Like first time you do heroin.
I wouldn't know.
You're hooked for life. Actually, talking about heroin, I don't talk about heroin, but since we are, I can't remember how many people in Vietnam War did heroin.
Yeah.
But it was over half.
Right.
I think it was close to 70%.
That's crazy.
When they came back, how many were still hooked? Do you know this stat? It was less than 1%.
Less than 1%
And
were
it was
still
the
hooked.
people who did not reintegrate into community that stayed hooked
Oh,
on heroin. Like one of the most addictive things in the world
right,
to the human body.
right.
They had community, and so they didn't need it anymore.
That's the power of
That's the
community.
Yes. So the way I like to talk about porn in particular is you outgrow it.
Mm.
You learn to not need it anymore. It's like um, um, training wheels on a
Mm-hmm.
bike or a pacifier. Like you
Mm-hmm.
go to it to soothe yourself. But
Yeah.
then when you get older, you can find healthy soothing mechanisms that don't require you to suck on a pacifier anymore.
Mm-hmm. Dude, so good. Um,
So to fully answer that question, the way change works or rewiring,
yeah.
which you have to carve a new path. And
Mm.
so it's kind of an uphill battle initially.
Yeah.
You have to not go down that old trodden path in the wheat field. You have to go down a new one. And over time, this one will grow in,
Mm-hmm.
although it may still be easy to take.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to learn new coping mechanisms. You have to be integrated with community. And that's what the Wolfpack is all about, is
So
providing
good.
that map for how to carve out that new path. And then that is literal neural pathways that are being
Mm.
formed in your brain. So you don't need that old path anymore.
Yeah. Talk to me about how does shame sabotage
Mm,
recovery? What does that look like? Like I know that's a big point within the Wolfpack
yeah.
method. Tuck, touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm a spiritual person. I'm a believer in Jesus, and a lot of the wisdom provided to us through the scriptures, I think, is life-changing wisdom. But um, shame is talked about in scriptures, and sometimes there's other words used like condemnation.
Mm.
But shame is, I would call it the most vile and the most uh, like the strongest tool that the enemy uses
Mm-hmm.
to keep us deceived, to keep us confused, isolated, addicted,
Mm-hmm.
cut off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so spiritual, but it's also just a part of the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no human alive that is immune to the power of shame or the voice of shame.
Mm-hmm.
What shame does in addiction is it adds fuel to the fire. So somebody might act out, cross some lines that they didn't want to, and then they feel like shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a physiological element to that where their dopamine levels are below, so they literally feel depressed in their body.
Mm-hmm.
They feel unmotivated. It's below that baseline level of dopamine. But the other part of it, shame kicks in because
Mm-hmm.
shame's a bitch
Mm-hmm.
and will kick you when you're down. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're down, shame will instantly come in and be like, look at you.
Mm-hmm.
You've done this 1,000 times, and there's proof that you're a piece of shit because you just did it again.
Yeah.
Look at you. Like, you are such a hypocrite.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to see that. And so here's one of the deepest message shame tells us. If people really saw you as you are, like this,
Mm-hmm.
after you did that,
Mm-hmm.
they would reject you.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do is we build up these walls. We isolate. Maybe we'll introvert, which is okay.
Mm-hmm.
But isolating a lot of times is the effect. In scripture, you saw Adam and Eve. They crossed a line that was drawn for them in the sand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And shame kicked in instantly, and they did three things. They hid. Remember, they hid in the trees, and they covered up. So they put on masks, but in their case, it was fig leaves
Mm-hmm.
to cover up their boobies,
Mm-hmm.
their little penis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, and that was shame telling them they
Yeah.
need to hide
Yeah.
and cover up. And the third thing they did is blame.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was too much for me to handle, so I'm going to blame her, or
Yeah.
she's going to blame him, or
Point the finger.
she's going to blame the snake, right?
Yeah. I want to jump back a little bit to shame too and see what you think about this. I mean, naturally we tend to agree with shame
Yeah.
a lot quicker than we would a compliment or who we truly are, right? Like why is that? Why do we connect with, I mean, obviously, us being both spiritual, focused and stuff like that, it would be sin, but why is it that we're so bent towards agreeing with shame?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think what we see in ourselves is where we fall short.
Mm,
Because I think most of us have this picture, if not all of us, have this picture of who we'd like to be,
mm,
or where we'd like to be, or the kind of decisions we'd like to be making frequently, or this list of improvements. And some of us have a really long list.
mm,
Some of us it's less idealistic, but we still would like to see improvements. And well, like I said, shame is a human experience, so shame will point out that deficit
mhm,
and bring you down.
mhm,
So humility, I think, is widely misunderstood because people think of it as belittling of yourself
mm,
or thinking less of yourself. But I think humility is thinking of yourself exactly as you are, with nothing to prove, nothing to hide.
mhm,
So you're not trying to bolster yourself to be something bigger than you really
mhm,
are, and you're not trying to belittle yourself to be something less than you really are.
mhm,
Like, you are flawed.
mhm,
You're right. I am flawed, but
mhm,
also you're tremendously more valuable than you realize.
mhm,
You're tremendously more loved than you could realize on this side of
mhm,
life. And when someday we're going to, be in the other side of life, and we're going to make eye contact
mhm,
with our creator, and we're just going to break down in tears because at our soul, we're going to be like, oh, that's what you meant when you said you love me as I am,
mhm,
you know? But then shame, I want to write a book on this someday. Like, I would love to write a book on the voice of shame versus the voice of God,
mhm.
because a lot of times shame acts like the voice of God.
Yeah, distorted.
Like, imagine this. Like, let's say you try to wake up at 5 a.m. and read your Bible, or
Mhm.
you have that in your head that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, shame would come in and be like, "Hey, I saw you set your alarm for 6:30.
Mhm,
You got up at 6:45, and you didn't even have time to look at your Bible.
mhm,
You should be better.
mhm,
You should be further along." And we think, "Oh, that's the voice of God."
mhm.
It's just shame making us feel like
Yeah,
shit.
yeah. The shitting.
It's shitting on us.
Yeah,
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 shooting.
yeah. Shitting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the voice of God is like, "Hey, you're right. I saw you got sleep late because you were hosting and loving on some people,
Mhm.
and you'd slipped in. And I'm so glad you prioritized your rest. And I'm really proud of you for taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
I'm excited about next time we get to sit down together."
Mhm.
Like, that's the voice of God.
Yeah.
But shame is always pointing out the deficit,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, you're never good enough. You gotta do more. Why do traditional models ignore the emotional root? This method is not
Yeah.
traditional.
Yeah.
Just disclaimer here, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is very much intentionality. This is very much like, I mean, you're getting in other men's lives and truly walking with them, opposed to traditional is more like, here's what you need to do.
Right.
Do it,
Right.
right? But I feel like they totally ignore the emotional root.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. So over the last decade, I've seen so many programs. First of all, I read all the books.
Hmm.
Not all of them, but I read, like, I was struggling out loud. I've been struggling since I was 8 or 9 when I first came across All in the Secret, right?
Hmm.
Until I was 21 years old. And then shit hit the fan. I had a girlfriend that I cheated on her, and she told all of our mutual friends once I finally had the balls to tell her.
Hmm.
She just wanted to wreck my life. So she told everybody.
Hmm.
I lost a lot of friends that day because I was leading Bible studies. I was leading prayer groups. People had this respect for me, and I was hiding this thing in the dark, you know.
Hmm.
So I learned not to hide anymore. And over the last decade, so I've been working through this out loud forever. I'm ADHD, so I bounce
Hmm.
all over the place.
Yeah.
Um, I've read these books. I went to the workshops, heard the sermons, memorized the verses, but nothing really worked. And so finally, over this last, really starting 8 years ago, I've been able to walk with these guys, and I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of guys find health, healing, sobriety, but more than sobriety, wholeness, integration.
Hmm.
Like, they're better husbands now, they're better fathers now, they're better at their work now.
Hmm.
And then I've seen dozens that didn't.
Hmm.
And so I'm paying attention to what programs are they a part of. There's a lot of the traditional path would be go to AA, get a counselor. Those are great things. Do those things. Or SA is what I went to, Sexaholics Anonymous. There's other ones, SA Non and all that kind of stuff. There Sexaholics Anonymous or whatever it's called. So there's a lot of different programs you could go to. And then counseling is really important, especially if there's trauma in your background. Like in my case, there was some trauma that needed to be resolved. There was also some complex trauma that needed to be resolved. I really needed talk therapy. I needed some EMDR as well. And so all those things are good. I don't do trauma, so I will clearly draw lines when somebody's bringing something up. I'm like, hey, this is the question to bring up to your counselor next time you're in this session with them.
Yeah.
Write it down. You know, I'll help them, but I'm not going to go there with them. I'm a
Right.
coach. I'm
Right.
not healing them. I'm more concerned with who they are today and where they're going to be tomorrow. Where a lot of counseling tends to look a little bit more backwards.
Yeah.
You know, where have you been? What happened to you?
Yeah.
You know, so those are the traditional models, and they tend to only hit on like 2 of the 5 or 6 things that need to be hit on.
Right.
You know, community is a big one. Your marriage, sometimes they'll go get marriage counseling also, or instead of individual counseling, which is a shit show. They've got to get individual counseling.
Yeah.
So I've seen so many things that work, and I've seen so many things that don't. Here's the other thing. There's methodologies that are destructive. There's some methodologies that encourage you to put consequences in your life. So you like snap a rubber band every time you have a sexual thought.
Yeah.
Dude, I would have chiseled through my arm by now. Like, and every time you slap yourself with that rubber band, you're feeling more shame. So it's actually causing more addiction rather than leading you from it. So anyways, methodologically, I've seen a lot of the traditional models don't work because they leave out community.
Right.
They leave out brotherhood.
Right.
So if they are hitting on relationships, it's just with your wife.
Right.
But like we forget about this for some
Yeah.
reason. You know, so one thing that was really interesting is they had this study with rats. I'd love to add it to your show notes.
Yeah.
But they did this thing with rats where they allowed a rat, if they pressed this little pedal, to get just a tiny little dose of heroin infused water. Opioids, right?
Yeah.
And anytime they had a solo rat do that versus if they had a community where they had that water bottle with just a little bit of heroin infused water, the one that was alone would do it until he died.
Jeez.
He would literally dose until it took his life. And the ones in community avoided that water bottle altogether. What? So why do we think that healing from and going through the work of sobriety requires you to be isolated over here, just meeting with the counselor, meeting with these anonymous participants in AA that you'll never build relationships with?
Yeah.
Because you kind of want to keep that anonymous. Although I do have some friends from SA.
Yeah.
I don't have, you know, the kind of lifelong relationships from it that I think would be ideal.
Right.
But I do know a few people still from it.
Yeah.
Why do we isolate them like that?
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to help.
Well, and I mean, spiritually speaking, right? Like the enemy wants us to be isolated because then we can be easily manipulated into the shame cycle.
Yes.
You know, and just continuing to, you know, increase the shame and the insult to injury and, you know, whatever he keeps us going with, the hamster wheel, you know. I want to pivot. You've kind of talked and touched on it quite a bit, and I mean it's perfect time now with this community talk and being in community. But sorry, the power of brotherhood. Why is community non-negotiable?
Okay, beautiful question. So if somebody wants one-on-one coaching with me, which I've done a lot of over the years, I've shifted my model to where they have to be a part of the community. Because that's priority first. They have to be building brotherhood. And I could give them direction. A lot of guys don't know how to build healthy friendships with men. I didn't for years, for decades.
Yeah.
So they need some guidance. They need some direction. They also need to know how to create boundaries there because maybe they had abusive dads,
Mm-hmm.
and relationship with men are scary. Like, I get that too. So I'll kind of walk them through it, but they have to be building that relationship with each other. The power of brotherhood is that, so think about an iceberg, the 80-20 principle. So 20% of the iceberg is above the waterline. It's an overused metaphor in so many areas, but I love this. 20% is above the waterline. That is addictions, behaviors, transparency. That's what I learned when I was 21 years old, is how to share this kind of stuff with people.
Right.
And we think, walking in the light,
Right.
or having an accountability partner. Oh, that's the other reason traditional models fail, is because they're driven around accountability instead of attunement. Accountability doesn't heal people. Attunement does. So you could find attunement with brotherhood. And accountability may be a passive element in that, but not an active element like a police officer. So all these things happen above the waterline that have to do with behaviors and actions and maybe words that were said or lines that were crossed. And so usually when I talk to men, they don't know how, it's their first time to talk about what's going on with the iceberg at all.
Yeah.
So this is all they could talk about. But what I teach them as soon as possible is how to get to below the waterline to the rest of the 80%, because that's where the stuff is that really matters. Below the waterline is their fears, their insecurities, the things that make them discomfort, their stressors at work, the pressure they're feeling, maybe their anxiety, their shame, and shame has so much power under the water.
Yeah.
So Brene Brown, she says, shame cannot survive being spoken aloud. So when you're talking about things below the waterline, which happens with healthy brotherhood and it happens in a healthy marriage, you're exposing things like shame messages. My wife this morning was sharing some shame that she was feeling today. I was like, well, let's put some words to that. And we unpacked it a little bit. And then she felt lighter from the conversation just because we're able to put some words to what those shame messages were, and then it has less power over her.
Yeah.
And so this kind of conversation happens in brotherhood. It does not, and it happens in a counseling room.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it doesn't happen in our everyday conversations. And so what I'm really trying to do is retrain us men how to really deeply relate.
So what makes daily support more effective than weekly check-ins or weekly meetings?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the human brain is so complex that I have millions of thoughts throughout the day. So how many times throughout the day am I going to struggle with temptations as an addict who's fresh into recovery? How strong are those temptations? And how many days in a week do you have to just fall on your face and sit in the shit before you have to come back out in the light?
Yeah.
Full 7 days.
Yeah.
You could leave your SA meeting or your AA meeting and go to your room and isolate for the next 7 days. I love the 24-hour rule. I like trying to get stuff out in the light before crossing those lines too. That's really the goal. You really want to get into a space.
Preventative.
Yes, where you're preventative, and you're like, hey, it's Friday. Usually Fridays are a day that I tend to act out. And I just had a really stressful conversation at work, and I could tell that if I go home right now, I'm probably going to make some bad decisions. So picking up the phone and having that conversation with a buddy helps diffuse that physiologically. It helps kind of keep everything lit up in your brain that helps you make good decisions.
Right. Yeah, hitting those neurons.
Right.
How do men move from isolation to authentic brotherhood? What's the process look like? What's the step look like? I have tons of shame, and all I've been doing is isolating. What does that first step look like?
Yeah. So in 12 steps, they talk about admitting that you're powerless over this thing. I think that's good, but I think the first step is talking about what's on top of the iceberg and then beginning to talk about stuff that's below the waterline. Because when they start to share this stuff, you'll see them shaking. You'll see them quivering in their throat, and terrified to be seen, because for years they believed shame. They believed that if people know this about me, they're going to reject me. And so they have to test the waters. They kind of dip their toes in, and they let us know, like, hey, this is what I've been struggling with. We had a guy at Fire Nights last weekend, so a week and a half ago, share about some suicide stuff, suicidal thoughts and ideation. And he was beginning to share stuff. He's in his 20s. Awesome man. Such a good heart. And he's starting so young doing this work. But he invited us into spaces and conversation that he never did. And with a counselor, with anybody. He started talking about it with us. He was cutting his wrist a few weeks prior, and we're able to have those conversations. So when they begin to have those conversations, and then we can respond with two things: radical acceptance. No matter what comes out of your mouth, I'm going to accept you as you are.
Right.
Radical acceptance. And then eventually they learn radical vulnerability. But so here they're just learning what it's like to be vulnerable and to let people see those things that are scary or dark. And then once they know, like, oh, I can share anything with this guy and he'll accept me. Or I could share anything with this group of guys and they'll accept me. And then they'll see my courage for even going there. And then they're affirming me. Like, so all of a sudden they feel like, wow, I have the resources to keep going here and keep going. And then what happens in the process is just really beautiful friendships are being formed.
Yeah. Dude, that is incredible. So do you have any, crazy powerful stories of transformation that you can share of just the transformation through just the simple act of connection?
Yes. Yeah. I'm thinking of some guys that come to mind. I want to honor their stories. It's probably safer to tell some of my story with this.
Yeah.
What was happening in my marriage, since I couldn't let men in, I still have these emotional needs because I'm human that are going unmet. And so I put all the weight of responsibility of those things on my wife. And so I expected my wife to meet all my emotional needs. Over time, she felt so fatigued and burnt out of trying to meet all my needs. I had emotional needs. I had these physical needs. I had these sexual needs. I wanted hugs and hand holding all the time. And she doesn't even want to be touched. She's an introvert. And she's like, I don't want physical contact. And I have kids climbing all over me, Burke. And you are still telling me that you need more from me? And when we were dating, I hate this. When we were dating, we used to say this thing so romantically to each other. Instead of saying, I like you or I love you, we'd say, I don't need you. And I forgot to maintain that posture going into marriage. I actually didn't know how, because I didn't know how to have those needs met in a healthy way. So it was all on her shoulders. And then over time, she got burned out and she's like, I don't want anything to do with it. I can't meet your needs, Burke. Sorry. And so I thought, I'll go meet some other girls. Maybe they'll meet my needs. And that's the direction things began to shift when shit hit the fan. And we came back to the States to save our marriage. In the process, instead of her learning how to meet all my needs, which is what a lot of traditional counselors would have tried to teach us, and we've had some Christian counselors try to teach us that, and it just was fuel on the fire. What had to happen is we took a hiatus from sex for almost 2 years. And that included like hand holding. Like we were just completely, let's focus on our friendship. And learn how to attach without physical. I needed that, and she needed that to learn how to feel safe with me. And in the process, I began to build healthy relationships with men for the first time in my life. And I started to not need her anymore. And so now our marriage, like the communication that happens in our marriage is the icing on the cake instead of the glue. Now the sex we have is icing on the cake instead of the glue that holds it together. I used to think I need sex, I need orgasm in order to be okay, in order to be a healthy human, in order for me to be able to get my work done. I need to, and part of my healing process is realizing, oh wait, I don't need sex. That means Jill doesn't need to have sex with me, which is also just a version of abuse, I think. To have that expectation on. ugh, that's so wicked.
Yeah.
It's so wicked.
Yeah.
But instead, for these things to be icing on the cake
Right.
and something that adds joy to our lives
Right.
instead of what we need for connection.
It's its true power.
Yeah.
Its true place in
Yeah.
our life.
Yeah.
It doesn't become, you know, where we suck it dry. You know, it truly is fulfilling.
Yeah.
And doing what it's meant to do. You know.
Yes.
Um,
You know what else is cool? Just
Yeah.
since we're talking about this, I'm realizing that as I needed her less, her needs got overshadowed less.
mm,
So she could bring up conversations like what we had this morning,
right.
and we could go deep, and I have no reason to defend myself or to, to equally share,
Mm,
or I don't need for her to meet some emotional things in me. Instead, I could use all my strength to meet her needs.
yeah.
And it's just now I have the capacity for
Yeah.
that
Capacity.
because
bro,
my
that's
needs are being
exactly what I
met.
was thinking.
Yeah.
Like it frees you up to
Mm.
be able to realize that you have a seat at the table too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And you're not having to try and dissect or, figure this out or meet this need when there's nothing to meet it with,
Right.
like you're actually free to like actually be you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the neuroscience
Mm.
behind
Mm-hmm.
the Wolfpack Method,
Mm-hmm.
how does the Wolfpack Method leverage neuroplasticity?
Yes. So what is neuroplasticity?
Yeah,
That's the capacity for humans to change.
yeah.
We can all change. You can teach an old dog new tricks. You actually can teach an old dog new tricks, but that applies to humans too.
Yeah.
Like it's not too late for you. So if you're listening to this and you're struggling, it's not too late for you.
Tell them.
It's not too late for you to change, to find connection that you're longing for, to find your needs being met and satisfied in healthy ways, and for that to just propagate all the change that's happening. It's not too late. I know that. I've seen men in their 70s go through this process. And at one point, one of the guys, it was his 50-year anniversary during a retreat, and his wife said, "You need this more than I need us to go on some,
Dang.
a hotel trip."
Yeah.
50-year anniversary, and he's in his late 70s, and she's like, "Go be with those men."
Yeah. That's so good. That's
Yeah.
so good. Let's be generous, a little generous here.
Go for it.
What are 10 daily practices that are essential?
Yeah. So with neuroplasticity, we can change, but there's certain times in our life where we could change more. So like young kids have so much neuroplasticity, and they can change so quickly.
Right.
They can learn new skills. They can learn entire languages 10 times faster than we can.
Right.
They can learn to walk, before they could talk. Like, I mean, imagine all the intricacies of learning how to walk. It would take us a decade, and it takes them a year, or less. It takes them a few months. So neuroplasticity is change, and there's things we could do to increase the speed of change or the rate of change. The way I talk about it is accelerating change. So you can accelerate neuroplasticity by drinking a lot of water. So that's not going to change you, but it allows your body to have the resources it needs when changes are happening. Exercise, absolutely fundamental. And we have a really clear guide for what that exercise can look like for you. And we're not personal trainers. If you need a personal trainer to add to that, perfect, do that. But we have a guide that works. And guys who are going through the recovery process and exercising are speeding it up. So I was doing HIIT workouts. I was doing CrossFit. And I was also spending about 45 minutes a day in the spa at our gym, where we could go to a sauna. I would do the sauna for 20 minutes and then a cold shower, and then the sauna for 20 minutes and then a cold shower. I didn't even know that what I was doing was speeding up my own rate of change, but it absolutely helped make deep. It helped mowing down the new pathway faster at the grass field.
So good.
or the wheat field.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some other things. Exercise, movement, cold therapy is actually a big part of that. So I was doing cold showers every day. I still do cold showers most days, and then I do cold plunges a few times a week. But it's what it does. Let's say you're scared of cold water. That's okay. It's only going to be a 90-day period where you're focusing on getting traction with your sobriety. If you're joining the Wolfpack, there will be a 90-day period where you're building up your cold tolerance. And you're learning how to expose yourself to cold. But even when you're exposing yourself to a little bit of cold, you're still getting the benefits. So you don't have to dive into a bath full of ice in order to reap the benefits. You could just slowly ease into it over the 90 days. And it's almost effortless, and you'll find that it's really enjoyable. But initially, it's scary. And that's actually, cold therapy is actually a really important part of it, because addiction, if you think about it, is a running away from your problems. So it's a posture. Instead of facing my discomforts, instead of facing my pains and stressors, I'm going to face away, and I'm going to go self-soothe over here in this fashion. Whatever that is, YouTube, alcohol, porn, prostitutes, whatever that mechanism is. You're not facing the problem you're feeling. And maybe you're facing a certain amount of your problems, and then you run out of reserves and resources, so you go over here instead. So I don't mean to totally diminish it, but it is a posture. Discipline, I don't think, is about consistency. I think discipline is the posture of saying, okay, I have a problem to solve. I'm going to face it. I'm going to embrace it. So mindfulness trains your brain to accept problems instead of to run from them. And then cold therapy allows you to step into your discomfort. So when you're stepping into an ice bath or you're feeling really cold, it's physiologically stress. It's stress on your body. And what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I'm going to feel the stress. I'm going to be in it. And then your body produces these resources where you're like, oh, actually, this is really nice. I have I can do this. But with addiction, we keep thinking, I can't do this. I can't do this. So we run away. We run away. We run away 1,000 times.
Choosing hard.
We choose easy so often. Right. So choosing cold exposure is choosing hard.
Yeah.
Great point.
That's good.
Yeah.
So the practices there's
yeah, let's go through them in order.
Yeah. So the cold.
Yeah. So there's 5 core practices that I highly recommend. If you're a part of my one-on-one coaching, I require you to do these things as part of the Wolfpack. Otherwise, they're all recommendations. I'm not going to require anybody to do this stuff, but unless they're like, hey, I need to pay you so you can make me. Right. So a gallon of water per day, 8 hours of sleep. Oh my gosh, sleep affects neuroplasticity so much. And a lot of us, with porn addiction especially, it might be an issue where we're losing sleep because of the addiction. Or if alcohol is the issue, well, alcohol is affecting your sleep because of the addiction. So really relearning how to sleep is really important for the sobriety process. 8 hours of sleep is hard for me. Yeah. So I get it, but it's just a high recommendation part of the process. Cold therapy is number 3. Number 4 is exercise and movement. That could be going on walks every day. And then call a friend is number 5. Ooh, that's good. I would say call a friend is the most important of everything on this sheet.
The community.
We need people. Yeah. We need the Wolfpack. Yeah. We need each other. Yeah. I'm not okay if I'm alone. So if my life is going great, I'm hitting all my success. I'm like doing everything on my list. I'm, connecting with the Father. I'm connected with my wife, everything. But I'm not connecting with other men. Then I am on the wrong trajectory.
Yeah. They're in community, like spiritually speaking, the Trinity was already in community. The Father, the Spirit, the Son.
Let us make man in our image.
Dude, that's so easily overlooked. Yeah. And if God himself is in community, what the fuck makes us think that we can get away from being in community?
Right.
Like,
or we justify it. We're like, oh, but I go to church. Oh, but I'm in a Bible study.
True community.
So I'm in community.
True community is
how
being
weak
seen,
is that?
Yes. Being heard. Yep. Like, I've been to fire nights. I've been to, some of the things that you've done, and it's like those times are sacred. Those times are so sweet because we don't get those times. You know, we busy our life up and we just don't have the time that we need for community. And we
Right.
need it.
Yeah.
We need community.
We need it. And then it gets to a point where you start getting community and you start having your needs met.
Yeah.
And then you learn this horrible lesson that community is inconvenient.
Mm-hmm.
I hate picking up the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so bad at it, and it's the most important thing in my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's more important than sitting down and like studying the Bible every day. And I'm gonna get, people are gonna hate that I say that. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I've found that I'm not even able to get much out of that if I'm
Yeah.
spending life in isolation.
Yeah.
So we need it so badly, and we don't even know how to do it. So call a friend is on the list. Those are the 5 core protocols.
Mm.
Then there's some additional ones that you could do. And so there's a video check-in where you could just check in with your body once a day where you're saying, how am I feeling?
Mm.
What's happening in my body? Am I feeling a big wave of temptation right now? Like my wife just went to the grocery store and I'm like flooded with all these things in me that say, look at porn. Like this is your only chance.
Mm.
Or, whatever we're going, maybe we just had a hard conversation. Maybe we're experiencing some financial stress. Most Americans, there's more debt right now than ever, and I'm included in that category. There's a lot of stresses around finances that are legitimate.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that shit. I don't hear anybody talking about their credit card debt.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fucking painful,
Mm-hmm.
And we've had those conversations
Yeah.
because we know what that's like,
Right.
but most people just don't go there.
Yeah.
They settle for a church Sunday morning
Yeah.
service where they worship with other people and call that community.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, but it's not even beginning to scratch the
Right.
surface of what our needs are. So daily check-ins. So we're doing a video check-in saying, how am I doing? Experiential prayer. So I teach some different methods for that, but that could be contemplative.
Mm-hmm.
It could be silent. It can be a silence retreat. I mean, there's so many ways to experience communion and communication with the Father that is not like intercession,
Mm-hmm.
and that has its place,
Right.
but it's taught all over the place. And what's happening is we're engaging our logical side of our brain instead of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so experiential prayer is really about engaging with the Father in a way that affects our heart.
Mm.
So I had a counselor recommend to me, he said, Burke, you're a navigator. You have a third of the Bible memorized already. You know more scripture than most people I've ever met. What you need right now is to take a break from the Bible for a year and stop learning about God and start experiencing what the Bible says. Oh, it was so transformational for me. I literally put down my Bible app. I deleted it. Actually, I didn't have an iPhone for a year. And I went out and I spent time with the Father in connection instead of study.
Yeah.
So experiential prayer. Another one is mindfulness and breath work. And I am a breath work instructor.
Yeah.
And I love that side. But breath is a way of paying attention to what's happening to the body, which helps us pay attention to what's happening emotionally, which helps us connect spiritually, which helps us connect relationally with others. So it's we learn presence by learning to return to the breath. So that's a big part of it. Another practice is journaling and gratitude. And I teach them some really simple but powerful tools that are based on positive psychology. There's so much research around these, especially by Martin Seligman. Dr. Martin Seligman has tremendous resources on this, but we don't call it gratitude. The practice that you're journaling is what went well. And literally just after journaling for 30 days about what went well over the last day, it rewires your brain to start focusing on positives instead of negatives. And then you have more resources to face the negatives in your life.
Right.
So it's absolutely fundamental. Another thing that helps is nutrition and supplements. Like lion's mane would be a sort of, or fatty omega-3s. These things help maximize neuroplasticity. So all of these things are helping accelerate change.
So good. There you go. That's 10. That's 10 freebies right there.
Yeah. Life-changing.
Who is the Wolfpack for?
Who's the Wolfpack for? You know, it could be somebody struggling with compulsive habits of any sort. So it doesn't have to be porn. It doesn't have to be sex. It could be alcohol. It could be social media. It could be overeating. It could be workaholism. It could be anything that they feel like they're struggling with that they can't get traction with.
Yeah.
I would invite anybody who is wanting to change in one of those areas and ready to take it seriously, join the Wolfpack. However, there's some caveats.
Yeah.
So I'm a Christian, so a lot of the stuff's kind of Christian. I don't care if you're a believer, though. You don't have to be of faith to be a part of the program. It's not a prerequisite, but just you can't be offended by if I'm bringing up something from the Proverbs or from my time alone with the Father, or when I'm telling you to pray. Doesn't have to be to God, but you're going to feel like you might be missing out sometimes because the conversations we're having that are life-changing from experiences with the divine. And then if you're a mystic, like, oh, that's welcome. It's probably not a good fit for people who are very dogmatic, who think they know what they need. Honestly, if they did, they're probably not going to be stuck anyways. You know, but I've had some conversation. That's why I vet my coaching clients. That's one of the things I'm really checking for, because if they're going to be so dogmatic that they're not open to new ways of changing, they're not going to be open to relationship. They're so stuck in their head center that they can't connect to their heart. That's where dogmatism exists, is up here. It's not faith down here. And then, you know, people who are offended by bad language or vulgar language, I'm all about dirty puns. I'm all about like crossing those lines, especially when I'm talking to a bunch of addicts. I'm like, fuck it. Like, let's talk about it. You know, like, what a refreshing thing. And so there's pastors that I've worked with. There's counselors that I've worked with. But so anybody's welcome. But it's those people who are dogmatic or like anti-bad language that I find, ooh, this is really not a good fit for you.
Yeah.
Neither of us are going to be happy in this relationship.
Who would you say point blank the Wolfpack is not for?
Yeah, it's well, not for women. Although all of this stuff works for women.
Yeah.
I want to create an environment that supports the men that are in it, so that it's fully safe there. Now, if we were just dealing with things like alcoholism, we could make it a co-ed thing. But I really want this to be for biological males.
Yeah.
And
Dealing with all aspects of life.
All aspects of life, not just sexuality.
Right.
All of it. Because sexuality is a big part of us, but it doesn't have to be there where the struggle is. Maybe you are struggling with porn, but alcohol is having a bigger effect on your marriage. Let's talk about alcohol. Like, who cares? Let's talk about the other thing later. But this is like, let's focus on where your biggest pain point is.
Yeah.
And then, children, really, guys who are in their 20s, I don't feel like are fully prepared. They don't have the resources ready to start doing their work yet. They can join the Wolfpack and they could get a lot out of it, but I don't think they're going to get the most out of it. I find that men who are closer to their 40s are really ready. You don't have to be there, but that's an interesting distinguishing factor as well.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to know, to get that out there. The last segment I want to jump into is integration and the big one, identity, you know, and the future.
Yeah.
So how do men sustain transformation post your program, or maybe they come to an intensive with you or an event or something and it rocked their world and it boom revived them, gave them life, and then you know, after a 90-day, you know, transformational challenge, you know, how is it sustained?
Yes. I love this. It's sustained by having an identity shift. So really, this whole program's not about sobriety. I don't give a fuck what your report card says, how many times you jacked off today or not. Like, who cares? That's a report card. That's what we used to use to determine whether or not we were worthy of love.
Successful or not.
Yeah. Did I do my Bible study this morning? Like, did I check these boxes? The report card doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is everything below the surface of the iceberg, everything in the heart. So we want sobriety, which is above the surface line, long enough to deal with it, to open the door to where we could deal with the deeper things.
Mm.
So we start off the whole program with 21-day sobriety challenge. There, I'm just giving you the tools you need to get through 21 days of sobriety, because that's really hard if you're struggling with a daily habit.
Yeah.
At 21 days, you could really begin to break old habits and begin to form new ones. And you're able to kind of reset your some of the dopamine patterns associated with those triggers and those habits. But it's not enough for lasting change. So you have to change the way we're relating with each other. And there has to be some deep neurological changes that take 60 to 90 days. So then after the 21-day challenge, there's a little reset period, and then there's another 60 days that I really want to push you through to the end of the 90 days total but the sobriety is just the security blanket, so we could really, or the door that's opening, so that we could really start talking about the things that matter, where change happens is at the heart level. It's like the roots instead of the branches. The roots have to be in healthy soil. So it's doing all that deep work. There has to be an identity shift. You've read things like Compound Effect or what's that one? Atomic Habits. Oh my gosh. They give so much info about, like, somebody who says, I run every day is going to stop running. But somebody who says, I am a runner, he keeps running the rest of his life.
Piece.
Having that identity shift is absolutely core to having long-term change. So one is saying, like, you might embrace the phrase, hey, I'm an addict. And eventually I'm an addict in recovery. But for you to say, I'm sober, like, I have the strength in me to not act out when I'm tempted. And I have the resources and I have the friendships in place. Like, first you have to experience it. And in the process, there's some visualization and some mind stuff that we have to do to rewire how we perceive ourselves and do that identity shift. And then finally, the future self. Okay, so you mentioned the word integration, identity, and the future. Integration is key to change and healing. So we want to integrate what we know with our heart. So we're integrating here. We're connecting right brain to left brain. So from logical to experience. Like we're integrating our past self, like that 10-year-old Burke that was molested on that bed in San Angelo, Texas at 2 a.m. Man, he's a part of me. And I've embraced that little boy instead of throwing him out as a dirty little kid making bad decisions. Like, no, like, that's my boy, and I want to take care of him. So part of the integration process is backwards looking, and that's really more of where counseling comes in. But then what about our future self?
The legacy.
Like, asking a guy, hey, where do you want to be a year from now? Who's the man you want to be 1 year from now? What changes does he have in his life? And then once you could really get a good picture of that, we could reverse engineer that. And that's part of the 90-day process, is beginning to integrate that future self into who you currently are and make decisions that bless that man instead of curse that man.
Oof, that's powerful.
Because I love him.
Yeah.
Dude, I've made thousands of decisions just being like, you know what? Burke can pay for this $500 next month or next year. Future Burke. But man, instead for me to love on him and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to not make this purchase because I want to bless future Burke. So that he has a lighter load. Integrating that into our current reality is absolutely fundamental for long-term change.
Loving yourself, self-love, past, present, and future is what I'm hearing. Like, and understanding how to do that, and what does it mean to do that? Like, that's so good. How does identity evolve through that process of what we were just talking about?
Yeah, so there's some identity shifts that happen in the process, because the first thing you believe about yourself is, man, I'm a fuck up. I can't get over this thing. And it's true, you can't get over it alone. You can change in community. But it's an identity shift that has to happen, where once you start to get some traction with sobriety, and maybe you'll have a relapse or two, and then you'll get some more traction, you're like, wow, I'm actually the kind of man who can make good decisions when I'm under stress. And then you begin to take on the identity shift. I'm the kind of man that really knows how to forge healthy brotherhood around me. Like, I'm the kind of man that guys in my community call when they're struggling. And I love to be that support for them. You know, like there's these deep identity shifts that begin to take place. You know, a deep identity shift that changed my life when we had 3 kids. It was overwhelming, and we're going through this recovery process. Right now we have 6 kids. I heard a podcast from my buddy Ryan Dobson, who was saying, let's just reframe this little phrase that says parenting is hard. Instead, every time we think that, what if we say, I love being their dad? Dude. And so I started doing that, and I started letting that be my trigger. And now I fucking love being their dad.
Yeah.
And we have 6 kids. It's like way more overwhelming sometimes. And I just took the kids camping. 4 of the kids, I took them camping for 48 hours. And I had one kid that was on antibiotics and like crying. He's 2 years old and crying, and he kept like trying to go play in the river, and he's too little. And so I'd let his toes get in. But I love being their dad. And so we have to have those identity shifts. And once those identity shifts happen, the deep change that's happening below the surface, those roots can finally start bearing fruit.
So good, dude. So good. Hey, as we land this, I want to talk about you a little bit. Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about your life and kind of what you're up to and stuff like that, but what's one daily practice that you, Burke, never skip?
Yeah. I make myself pick up the phone, call a friend.
Yeah.
So I try to do a cold exposure every day. I try to exercise or go on a walk every day, but I can't hit it every day. And it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, life is busy. Logistics are complicated. I can't get 8 hours. Actually, dude, to confess, like the last 6 days straight, I haven't, until last night, I haven't gotten more than 6 hours of sleep. I haven't even gotten 6 hours some of those nights. And my goal is 8 hours. And it's just,
it's hard.
I was camping with kids, and I had these work projects, and I just overextended myself.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I try to call a friend every day. And so I'm really bad at actually calling a friend. So over half the time, I'll send them a voice memo. And the voice memo could say, hey, I'm not expecting a response. I'm just checking in with you because I need it. And then I check in with myself. Or I'll call them and I'll say, hey, I just want to let you know how much you mean to me. And this is why.
Yeah.
And I think I've done that for you.
Absolutely.
Something I've also done is I'll say a prayer just through voice memo. And I find that's less invasive, because shame, that deep message that I half the time believe is they're too busy for me. Yeah. They don't actually want to hear from me. I know it's not true cognitively, but my heart, I'm like, surely they don't care, you know? And so it's so hard for me to pick up the phone because of that stupid message in the back of my head. But then if I just send a voice memo, they could call me back. They could send me a voice memo back. They don't even have to respond. But at the very least, I'm in a posture of connection instead of a posture of isolation.
That's good. What do you say to the man hiding in shame right now? What do you say to him?
Man, I've been there, brother. Shame is telling you that if people really saw you as you are and really saw what you've done, if people really knew those things about you, that you would not be accepted, that you'd be rejected, you'd be left alone, your wife would leave you, your friends would abandon you, your parents would just hang their heads in disappointment. And man, that's just not true. And it's so easy to believe, and I believed it for decades and lived in hiddenness and didn't let people see what I was going through. So I get it, but you don't have to hide anymore. You can be seen and loved as you are.
So good, dude. So good. That's so powerful. I'm over here like getting rocked.
Like, I need that.
Yeah.
I need these reminders every day.
We all need it.
Every fucking day.
We all need it. Okay, now here's the real question. here's like the one that might be a little salty, right?
Nice.
What is the cost of not changing?
Man, for a lot of us, it's the literal cost of divorce. I have friends who have spent over 6 figures. We've spent almost 6 figures on doing our work. I have another friend who they had bought a BMW, and they're like, "Hey, this is funny because we've spent more on saving our marriage than we did on buying a car, a brand new car. They bought it cash. Like, they prioritized, like, hey, we need this." So the other thing is, when I went into the recovery process, I wasn't alone. I had a team around me. It was a restoration team with the navigators who took such good care of us. And this whole team just gave us guidance through the whole process. And we prayed with them about how to go through the whole process. And they have decades of experience. And they said, do counseling individually first, and then do marriage counseling at the end. So, because if you can't get through your own baggage, then you're not going to be able to come together and do your own work together. So, I highly recommend investing in your own work. And if your wife's interested in doing her work, invest in that, man. Invest in it. If she's not, you can't force her. Who cares? Do your work. When you're working for your heart and you're fighting for your heart, you're fighting for your marriage. And so for a lot of us, the cost of not doing the work is losing our marriage. And then it's a literal cost of divorce, and that's not fucking cheap. What about the cost of not getting to be with your kids anymore? From stuff that was preventable, from stuff that could have changed. Like, I get it when stuff, like, it's over half of marriages. I totally get it. Like, there's stuff that happens that's outside of our control, or stuff that happens that we never imagined. But when it's in our control, it's such a high cost. Such a high cost. Not to mention, just being lonely and isolated the rest of your life is not the life you want to live. Life is so short. Man, we're not designed to live it alone. We can't thrive with that. Even at the end of that movie, Into the Wild, remember, he went to Alaska. He like burned all of his money and just hitchhiked his way to Alaska. And I kind of enjoy that movie. It speaks to a lot of stuff that resonates with me. But at the end of that, do you remember what he wrote in his journal? Like, the day before he died or while he was dying, he quoted like Ralph Waldo Emerson or something about life is not worth living, or experiences aren't worth having alone. And he died alone. You know, like, that's not the life I want for people either.
No,
that's cost.
Yeah, we need community. We need this. This is so good. All right, end it with this. Finish the sentence. A real man is. A real man is.
A real man is one who has the strength to be real. It takes courage. A real man is one who has the strength to be real. That's what I think.
That's good, dude. That's good. Hey, Burke, I just want to tell you, thank you so much. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for, stepping up and doing something grand like this, because there's greatness behind it. And, it very much falls in line with, what I do with Free Fortitude and stuff like that, with men's mental health and stuff. So it's definitely a soft spot, because we need it. We need to be seen. We need to be heard. And you're out there doing it, dude. And so thank you so much for doing that. If people want to get in contact with you, how do they do that?
menfullyalive.com.
menfullyalive.com.
Yeah, and you could join the Wolfpack community through there. It's a free community. There's a paid group coaching program if you want even more connection and integration and guidance through the whole process. All of this is available for free through the community. Join it. Just be a biological male and you're in. Very low requirements. And then if you want to join the group coaching, there's some vetting. And then if you want to do one-on-one coaching after that, then, there's a whole application intake form process.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Steve.
my pleasure, brother. So good to be with you always.
So good.